Good morning, and welcome to Atlas Morning here to another episode of Steelfur Speaks. I guess less of that and more just we're generally talking today about Genesis Battle of Champions, obviously a game I've covered. I've been playing a little bit on the side. And if you are paying attention with your eagle eyes, you'll see I have backed on Kickstarter, but that's another matter entirely. I wanted to do a bit more of a deep dive into this game, and I've been joined today very kindly by a guy called Sid, who I'm going to get to come on and introduce himself in a second. And Sid is the champion of the recent 2021 Genesis Championship, which happened in North America. As a very, very interesting person to speak to for that region, for that reason, in fact. And we're going to sort of break down and talk about strategy a little bit, and why, this is a very strategic game. Maybe watch a bit of his game and sort of talk about that. So I'm going to get him on in a second. Thank you all for joining me, and I hope you find this very, very interesting. Hi everyone, so as mentioned, I am back, of course, with Sid, who is, I don't know your last name, or if you even want people to know your last name, who is...
It's up there.
Yeah, so you are, of course, the recent 2021 Championship finalist, I think winner of Genesis, and, that championship that was run in North America, was it Canada? Did you have people coming from all over? How big was it?
There were about 43 people at the actual championship. I didn't get to converse with all of them, but there was a fair spread in regards to COVID, of course. Bring in people from a fair distance. I think there were some people from America. I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, but for the context, obviously, this game has just launched in Canada and is now going on to Kickstarter to launch further out. So getting only people from Canada is fine, a few people from America is fine, and 40 people for a new card game that hasn't even really done massive print runs or marketing or those kind of things is actually quite good, I would say.
Oh, the actual game's been around for about 4-ish years. I've only gotten into it recently myself as well, but the actual it's starting to push now.
Well, one of the things I said in my Kickstarter review video is that one of the things you look for on Kickstarter is a demonstration that the product is real, that it works, and that it's been tested. And when you start hearing that the game's been around for 4 or 5 years, lots of people have been playing it, people are getting into it. That's a very positive thing to hear. But we're obviously not here today to talk about the Kickstarter, because we've done that enough, and I'm sure you've done that plenty. We're here today to talk about strategy, which is what a lot of my listeners are, in fact, interested in the end. So do you want to give us a bit of an overview, maybe, of the types of decks that end up in Genesis? I mean, when we were talking before the show, you said your deck is actually designed to win very quickly, so that's more of an aggro style. Is there more board control style, that kind of thing? Do they crop up as well?
Yeah, with the game, the design philosophy is that there's 3 main types of decks that you can build. One of them being the fighter, which is what mine focuses on. Then we go to AoE spellcasters, spellcasters really, and then there's summoners, which focus on bringing things into the board.
Okay, and why? I mean, you played the fighter at this championship. Was that just because you view it's the strongest, or did it appeal to you for other reasons?
Well, the main meta was focusing on people bringing in a summoner of a particular champion called Nubia.
Okay.
Drops the horrifying, gigantic monster called an angel. And my deck was designed with that in mind, and to take down that champion as quick as possible.
So when you say the meta was leaning that way, I mean, what sort of meta dominance are we talking about? Are we talking 50%? Was it less than that?
If you were to take a survey at local tournaments, it'd probably about 60-65% were running. It's, for a newcomer to the game, it's the most accessible, and it makes the most strategic sense.
But that is still quite a high level of meta dominance when you're thinking about competitive games in terms of balance. That's one hero being very dominant over the meta. So that means that the majority of the games you play would just be a mirror match, right?
Yeah, if people aren't focusing on other things, as the local metas develop as well, they change, and diversity that comes in from there.
I'm not being negative. It's perfectly normal for a new game to have that focus on a linear, easier to play champion, which, as you say, is accessible because it has. I mean, I'm assuming it doesn't fill itself up with rares and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's also the easiest to teach.
Well, that does help a lot when you've got these early games. But you decided to go with something different, which was the meta call to just counter that. So let's just talk, I guess, a bit about your deck and how it plays, because those who aren't familiar with Genesis, I've got the video up in front of me so you can see it on the screen. It is a game played on this grid map. Each summon / champion you have can move every turn that they have, and of course you have this idea that you're going to cast spells from your hand, similar to many other games that people have played, and those spells are either going to be to summon creatures or do attacks or do AoE effects and that kind of thing. So the deck you're talking about is focused about summons, so it's about bringing out these powerful creatures and then using those to win the fight. Your deck, you said, was focused more on fighting, which I guess is using your champion to actually just beat up the opponent.
Yeah, it's well, as a lot of games, and like as soon as the champion dies, everything else wipes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the main focus is taking down that champion, with the summons and stuff being basically obstacles.
Yeah. So would you then say that the deck you built is more of a linear strategy where you're just trying to get your champion into, I guess, melee range and then just hit them as hard as fast as you can?
Yeah, with the awarenesses on the cards dictating how you're going to use them. It's definitely focused on getting in as close as possible, backing off if I need to, but there's not a lot of like evasion in my deck.
So I guess the question that a lot of people are going to wonder, if you're thinking about comparing this to other games, I mean, if you've got all of these things going on, going for the champion just seems to be a good default approach to just try and end the game as quickly as possible. But how much of the gameplay in terms of, I guess, tactics just comes down to everything just getting in a position to beat up that champion, playing the most aggressive attacks you can? Because there's no card limitation on how many of one card you can include in the deck, right? So
yeah, it's based on a chi system where each card has a separate value of 250 chi. And you have to have a deck full of 50 cards. It's a hard set at 50.
Yeah.
And the maximum you can go under the 250 chi, but it has to be, or it caps at 250.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be familiar to a lot of people because it's, the idea is that the limitation on the design of the game and the power level means that you can't include just 10 really good cards and just draw them in a row, which is quite good. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, from a competitive perspective, like, how much does it feel like there's flexibility in the core strategies of the game? Like, does it feel like it's always going to be this aggro, I get my big summon on the board, or I just come up to you and start punching you? Or do you feel like that's just early game now?
It's a good philosophy to base decks on overall. But as things develop, and sorry, I'm getting distracted here. As things develop, that's where the movement tech and evasion comes into play.
Okay, so
if you can dodge, like for my deck, if you can dodge basically 2 or 3, I'm gonna have to take more time to recover to go again.
Yeah. The thing I noticed when I was playing is that I was playing that starter deck and there was an archer, and every time I tried to punch them, they'd just move away on their turn, and it was like, okay, so if I went first, I could hit them, but if they didn't, they'd just run away, and then they just start shooting me from a distance. So you're kind of saying that you feel like there will be room for that more, like, just more controlling, more like deliberate style of gameplay is what I'm trying to understand, really.
Yeah, right now the game's fast. With the new sets coming up, I think it's going to slow down a little bit more.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who, I guess when you look at a card game, say something like Keyforge or something like that, where people are just throwing cards at each other to see who can reach the goal fastest, that turns a lot of people off because, you know, and you I guess you feel like Genesis has at least the potential to go a lot deeper than that, even if it's aggro now.
Yeah, it's aggro now, but how things can stack up, you can modify the stack, and you can cancel a lot of things that the champion's just doing if they're in the area that you want them to be.
Okay, I mean that's good to hear. So let's take a step back from the meta sort of discussion and just talk more about like a specific game of Genesis. So you've just started. What is your first goal, or what should a person's first goal be? Let's say round 1 or 2.
To start enabling turn control.
Okay.
Turn control with each thing you have on the board, excluding alteration. So if you have multiple summons, you have multiple turns in that round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Each one gets to do an action before it exerts. But you can take advantage of your opponent being out of position or in an advantageous position, and just dominate them from there.
So what we're talking about, for those who aren't as familiar again with Genesis and are just watching this to learn a bit, basically the turn structure is for every unit or champion you have on the board, you have the ability to activate them for your turn. You'll pick that unit can do an action and then gets exerted, or depending on what sort of unit they are. We have one on the screen, and then your opponent gets to do the same thing with one of their units or one of their actions, and then you get to choose again. So depending on where your things are on the board, you activate one, you move it, it does an action, which means that if your opponent is out of position and you're the one who has an action to do, you could potentially move a creature next to them, smack them, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing is, without making summons, how do you get control? Because obviously the more summons you have, the more turns you have available to you. How do you get that control if you're not just filling the board with creatures?
If you can utilize your turn to the best of your ability with the resources you have, you can negate their useful turns. You can also basically run away and keep yourself out of position while they're chasing you down.
But so from my understanding of it, so if I've got 3 summons here and you've just got your one champion who's a fighter or whatever, they're going to have 3 turns, and you have to do your first turn and then exert, right, to do whatever. So they'll just move something at the back, and then you'll have to move, and then they get 2 other moves before you can act again.
Yes, they get to as soon as they're all of their turns are finished, then you're going to the next round.
Yeah. So how does the game handle that disparity of, I guess, action resources, or is it maybe the case that the fighter champion is so good on their one turn that it makes up for all of the summons moving and doing their own thing?
Yeah, with each like summon being restricted to the actions that are on their card, and not being able to play extra cards from your hand during your summons turns. It's balancing that out.
Okay.
Plus, with the positioning aspect and the awareness, you're needing to take that time to get things in order, to actually get things done.
So we're talking about a situation where, as long as you're 1 or 2 squares or the right number of squares away from a summon, you can kind of negate the impact of that card on the board.
Yeah.
Just by controlling position, which is, I guess, a lot of what people are looking for from Genesis is a positional aware gameplay. I mean, I guess you would say, but would you say that position and the arena is working as intended in the game?
Yeah, it's actually, it adds a whole nother dimension to actually playing. You have to think in a strategic mindset in regards to your positioning, what your resources are, and how to best utilize them.
So, I'm just thinking now, just to like more broadly, maybe just take a step back. So, could you give us a bit of an idea of your own background playing card games? You know, what games have you played before? Um, was this your first game?
Um, no, I've been playing games since about high school, with myself being 29 now.
Hmm.
I had a group of friends that got me into Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay.
Oh, we used to play. I used to have terrible decks there because I didn't really have the card pool to go off from.
Hmm.
Um, and then around the same time, I got it into doing Magic in just like a virtual format
Hmm.
using my Xbox to play Xbox or to play Magic.
Hmm.
From there, it's basically just been jockeying back and forth. I tried to get into Pokemon recently, but the actual opportunity I had fallen through. And then a few months ago, I was going to my local game store with the 2019 champion, Steve Torrell.
Hmm.
He introduced me to the game, and we did it some demonstrations, some deck examples, and then I chose to buy my first booster box. And within that first booster box, I happened to pull a god pack of all foils,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and I decided to just say like, okay, let's do this.
Those do exist, people, by the way. I don't know what the ratios are, but every so often you can just get a god pack, which is a full foil thing. Very pretty. Um, so, so you played a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh, you played a bit of Magic, and then someone gave you this game. I mean, what was it? Was it the fact that you got into it and you had a friend that played it, or was there something mechanically about the game that just grabbed you, or was it just right place, right time, that kind of thing?
It was kind of right place, right time, but the additional aspect of the grid board system, I I took a huge liking to that because it was based on. Well, I started thinking it as a chessboard,
Mm.
basically, using like you have your champion, which is your king, but
Yeah.
then your champion has other utilities, and you can create your board system with pawns, and you add a intrinsic value to which of the cards that you have on the board.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's actually probably going to appeal to a lot of people about this game is the idea that it's not just what you're bringing to the table in terms of, you know, the cards in your deck and how powerful they are. It is also a level of your own individual understanding of the spatial level of the game and where pieces are on the board. Um, that's kind of a question. Because, I mean, I assume your local community then has started playing this game a bit more. Like, do you have a following there?
Yeah, things have definitely gotten a lot bigger, especially well, pre-tournament it was starting to pick up, but after the tournament, plus with the hype behind the Kickstarter, it's
Hmm.
definitely starting to
And
explode.
I guess the question then is, where are these people coming from? Are they coming from other card games? Are they coming from war games or things like Underworld, Warhammer, and things like that? Um, what kind of players are joining your community?
I'd say about 60% are coming from the local card game community, but there have been a lot of people, a lot of interest from the war games. I've seen like BattleTech and Star Wars Legions, I think it is.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something about this game. I feel like we've seen a bit of this. It might be the trend for 2022, which is that there are quite a few games in development now, planned for next year, including this one, that are taking advantage of the fact that spatial awareness is something people seem to want as part of their games. And the idea that having your warband in Underworlds or something like that, which is good because you can customize the deck and your objectives and things like that, isn't as good as just being able to put down a card that represents a monster and change it whenever you like, right?
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, people like painting minis, but it's much easier to just chuck some cards in a deck and then, yeah, I don't know.
oh,
we'll
How
see.
about yourself? Like, how did you get interested or introduced to the game?
Well, I have been playing. I mean, I've been playing card games since I was 10 or something like that. So about 20, 21 years ago. Um, but for Genesis specifically, it was just people talking about it on the various Flesh and Blood discords. They were like, "Why don't you give this game a try and have a bit of a look at it?" Because I abandoned TCGs for about 10 years. I was playing these LCGs and I didn't want random packs and all that kind of stuff. It was just depressing me how much money it cost to play a TCG. And I said I'd never play one again. But then the company I was with killed my the LCG I was playing, the Legend of the Five Rings LCG, and then I was like, well, I
Oh,
need something new to play, and someone got me into Flesh and Blood, and then from that I saw Genesis and thought, hey, this looks really cool. And I mean, there was a store selling it in the UK. They were selling beta boxes and stuff like that. It wasn't selling out particularly fast.
hmm.
But I just thought I'd buy it. And I mean, I'll be honest, part of me was like, well, if this game gets interesting, then I'm going to have all of these beta boxes sitting here. And I bought them for £80. And that seems like a smart bit of a gamble for me. Um, um, but at the same time, I was sort of sitting there thinking, well, I'm looking for videos to do on the channel and I'm reviewing these games that are coming out to try and see whether or not they're interesting and things like that. So I just bought a Genesis starter and had a bit of a look at it. Um, and I think the thing for me is I was very, very impressed when the games when I opened up the game for the first time, because I also had Digimon and I had MetaZoo in front of me, and I was just impressed at how simple the rules were. Um, just straightforward, which I think is a big deal. Um,
Yeah, having a game be easy enough to pick up to actually have the game be enjoyable when you first play it, it's
exactly.
definitely a huge, huge boon.
Yeah, and I mean, I've taught people to play Genesis. I've played Genesis with two of my friends now, and it's literally like a 3 minute session just to be like, okay, this is your deck. This is how you pay for things. It's no big deal, you know. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I think it's just very appealing, and I'm kind of curious to see. I guess the thing I'm most curious about, would be good to have your thoughts on, is just like how well I expect this game to be picked up in other regions. Because obviously in Canada, you've got your home market advantage, but
Well, I know the games can actually already gotten pretty large in the German markets.
oh wow,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, a lot of the a lot of the product has already gone down there. Um, with the recent uh, expansion into the US as well, things have been definitely picking up a lot.
Hmm.
I know the UK has been fairly decent, at least.
I mean, I've still only seen one shop stocking it so far, but I guess we'll have to see. The UK, I mean, unexpectedly being the home of Games Workshop, the UK does have quite a strong war game community who
Hmm.
are always looking for new things to play. And I mean, if this could attract some of them, then I guess
Yeah,
it might be a bit more productive. Though that's not on you. I know that's a business decision for Assad to work out when he when he's sitting down with his team. It's just good to. I mean, I don't know. From my perspective, it's good to get the impressions of someone who is actually just playing the game, say every week or every other week, COVID permitting, and I guess the feel of how it feels for you and your community on the ground.
hmm it's definitely been exciting watching the game actually pick up speed and like accelerate as more and more people pick it up.
Hmm. So I guess what from your perspective, what's the next thing you're excited to try? So you had this championship you've won with this fighter deck in November. Do you see just continuing to play that meta, or have things shifted a bit since then?
Um, my personal philosophy is like basically I avoid using the meta as much as possible. My first deck was the Nubia deck,
Hmm.
still very strong, but now I'm focusing on building things that are off meta or things that might have been looked over.
Yeah, got to
There's
keep
one
it.
particular champion that's really down in the dumps called Odara. I'm really trying to figure out something for her.
So you feel like the game is? I mean, is the game rewarding for people who want to pick a really fun champion and just play it, or do you feel like?
But yeah, there's a lot of space, a lot of new ideas that can be seen in champions that haven't really been particularly used. With Nubia being like the main meta, but as we see in the championship, neither of those two champions are there. That we have Core and then we have Kun
Hmm.
actually topping, which Core was complete dark horse. You didn't see him coming from. I didn't see him coming at all.
Hmm. Well, I guess that's the most important thing that a lot of people are going to look for, especially people coming from Flesh and Blood, which is the majority of my audience these days. You know, they enjoy the idea of that champion-based gameplay and being able to go all in on a champion and just find lots of different strategies. And I think this is one of the things that I found very appealing about Genesis, because you've got those cards coming out, and obviously each champion has these colors, basically. Um, Theoretically, every set that comes out is going to give you tools for your champion, right? Because there's no way that they're locked off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's continuing forward, and as it expands,
The expansion is
whole,
the
whole
yeah. That's the thing you
exactly.
need now. Because you're getting a new faction, aren't you? In
Mhm.
in the
Uh,
Kickstarter.
yeah, faction we have not seen yet that has been printed on the card since the beginning would be the green faction, Phage.
I was going to say, because yeah, it must already be present on some of the cards and on some of the symbols, but you just don't have any
Mhm.
heroes that use it yet.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I think there's gonna be a big shift in the meta.
Hmm. I mean, that's what everyone wants. I think is the meta has to keep evolving. One of the biggest complaints about card games is this idea of meta staleness, and that's why I was a bit nervous when you said that one champion was 70% of the tournament, and I was like, that's not good. um, but
Well, that was focusing on local tournaments. Actually, the actual championship, there weren't as many as I expected.
oh, that's good then. That's much better. Because obviously the biggest warning sign as a competitive player you could have for a new game is if one champion is like 60, 70, 80% of the meta and no one has a good win rate against them. Because that means there isn't depth in the card pool to actually iterate and counter the champion that's causing all those problems. Which is,
Mhm.
kind of a warning sign, really. But it sounds like that has actually happened quite a bit with champions, so
Yeah, as new people coming in the game, it's there have been definite checks to bring her more in line.
hmm. Well, that's good to hear, at least. I think we've just been talking for about 25 minutes. We might just end on that note there. So I've had your games just going on in the background for people to have a bit of a watch for a while. They can see the sort of structure of the turn where you're going to summon your creatures. You're going to sort of go up into close with the enemy and play lots of cards that attack them. I think the turn I just watched, you played 4 of the same card, which looks like a punch. Um,
Oh yeah, okay.
Is that just a basic attack that your champion has? It just punches someone and then.
Yeah, I think the one you're looking at would probably be the left hook turn.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it does look like it's a left hook. Yeah.
that was an interesting play versus misplay on my part. But yeah, that's just like you spend 3 energy, which is burning 3 off the top of your deck
Oh,
to do
wow.
1 damage. But if you wanted to go in, I can go into that turn. I remember it exactly.
Why not? I'll put it up and let's just talk about that a little bit. Right. So let's go back. So the start of the turn. Where are we now? I think you're just in melee with your opposing champion. Um,
Mhm.
and then you just start playing cards, right? So why don't you just talk us through how that actually works? So you've got these cards called left hook, and you just start try to deal 1 damage over and over again because your opponent's on 3 health, so you just need to get 3 damage in, right?
Yeah. So the first thing I did with my champion is I moved up and initiated with my first attack. Like on the champions, there are actual attacks you can use as well.
Mm.
So my initial attack would be doing 2 damage, which he would have to respond to, or else game over.
And just
Then
for this, how does he respond to that then? So you're saying here's 2 damage.
he, I think, played a card called Sidestep. No, Odin. Odin, which is you move left or right whilst you're being targeted.
Okay, so he ran away from you then.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
good evasive response.
Yeah, so that's how, and then it just stops the damage because you're not in position anymore.
Yeah, the as the stack resolves, the actual damage would fizzle.
Okay. And how do you follow up from that, or because I think left hook is just an attack forward facing thing.
Yeah, as well with the different card speeds.
Mm.
Left hook is a swift, so you can play it in response to essentially any other card, as long as you have a target within the awareness that's on there.
So you can punch him before he moves away.
Exactly. As he's starting to move away, throw the left hook down to do a damage.
Yeah.
And to see what comes out from there. I believe he then plays a card called Pressure Point to negate my left hook, which, he's burning 6 off of the top of his deck to stop 1 damage.
Wow. So it seems like a lot of these cards that they block damage or put pressure on do actually require card burn off the top of the deck.
Yeah, the different resources, the 3 types of resources, you have your aura, you have your deck, which is based on your energy, and then your health.
Yeah.
So when you're playing an energy card, you're burning off the top of your deck.
So you really do just kind of have to manage fatigue along the 3 axes then.
Yeah.
The HP being the one that has to go last, obviously.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So you said that this turn was a misplay, though, for you, and that's just because you didn't successfully do any damage, or was there another reason that it went badly?
Well, I had 3 left hooks in my hand, and all of his dodge and his counter was getting from the front. With my champion, with Kun, at the beginning of my move, I can I have 1 free movement, and then 2 more I can do.
Okay.
And then before my turn ends, I could have played my swift left hooks. He only had 1 response, 1 way to go with Odin. So he can only go left or right, but as long as the positions are not occupied.
Okay.
On his right side, he had that position occupied by, I think it was a skeleton warrior.
Yeah, I can't see from the glare, but he has something there.
Yeah, if I had moved and positioned myself to get him on his top side, his left side, I could have just played my 3 left hooks and won the game there.
So I think what you're saying there is that his response options were actually positional as well, so he could only block from the front, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So actually,
he did have an option in Odin, but if I had blocked that option off, then I won. That would have been a faster win.
Okay, so that's important to consider, I guess, for fighters, is that if you can get behind the shields, the shield might also be frontal as well. And that's how you're going to land your punches in. Okay, so that is quite an interesting, I think, example for people who are going to be wondering, like, how much these positional things matter. In a sense that it is very much like certain miniatures games where if you are attacking from the back, they actually have less options. And, much like D&D, the combat is accelerated time, so they can't just turn around and shield. You are punching them before they have a chance to respond.
Yeah,
it's actually very, very interesting. It is something that other games just do not have and do not bring to the table. Do you feel like, and I guess this is a big question, which we'll wrap up on, not that I'm not enjoying talking to you, but I'm wary of video length, but do you feel like that is, because I don't know, for some people I feel like location isn't necessarily a skill that card gamers generally have a lot of the time. I'm trying to figure out if location is maybe a bridge too far for a lot of people. You know, if
I if you're coming with a basis off of other TCGs, it's not as difficult as something to introduce. It's just another or another uh, a dimension you add on to there, and it gets fairly simple to understand, but matching it and understanding what actions are going to be coming in the future takes it gets easier basically
yeah,
as you play.
it's probably kind of like a learned pattern kind of thing, but yeah, I'm trying to when we're thinking about like the appeal of Genesis, I'm trying to think, you know, how much is location just going to be an obstacle to people actually wanting to play the game, because they're like, I don't want to have to think about where my 2/2 creature goes. I just want my 2/2 creature to attack you, you know. The magic teleporting bears that just get to the enemy planeswalker every single time they want to do a 2 damage. Yeah. So I guess. Well, I mean, I guess we'll just see, right? I mean,
Yeah, give it a shot, basically.
yeah. I mean, I know for the London community, I have various starter decks and things around. I think I've opened 2 boxes of Jalara 2 here somewhere, but I haven't really sat down and built decks with them or anything like that. Maybe I'll build that easy to play deck you were talking about for myself and just see what it looks like.
You gotta open those booster or those beta boxes?
Probably not. Maybe not. I don't know yet. I have 2. I have 1 beta box. I have 2 of the Welcome to Raise or the Raise. I have 2 of the other one because that was just like, well, they're doing a Kickstarter and there's only 600 of these printed, so I may as well buy them.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
You know? Part of being a TCG player, and especially if I've got this YouTube thing, which takes a lot of time, is making sure that when I try out a new game, I'm not losing money when I'm doing it. It's very important. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for obviously taking the time to talk to me. I know it's fairly early on in your day, and of course it is during the Christmas holiday period. You know, I think this is promises to be a very exciting game, and it is a very exciting year for TCGs. And generally, I want to make sure in my content I'm supporting the games that look like they have good gameplay and depth, and making fun of the ones that don't. MetaZoo, and yeah, you know, just generally being positive about games that I think are very good. So thank you for joining me to talk about Genesis.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's a great time conversing with you.
Yeah, and we have apparently unlocked the stretchiest of stretch goals, which is extra championships in the US, Canada, and Europe. So, you know, I guess good luck next year if those come around. Hopefully, COVID permitting, everything is COVID permitting now. But
COVID permitting, god damn it, it's been 2 years at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope you smash them, and yeah, good luck. Well, I guess we'll have you back to talk about it when I understand the game a bit more and we can properly dive into it.
I would be more than happy to come back on.
I'll be a Genesis commentator by then, see if I'm not all over the world. All right. Thanks a lot, and bye.